This talk is on understanding and managing loneliness. So, to begin with, it's important to note that our nature is about connection, connecting to others, being with others. We look at the world through seeing how other people perceive it as well. I mean, we have our own lens and we make our own decisions, but we also observe others and how they perceive things, and we react in relation to others. So we're very, very social creatures, and connection to others is really important to us, which is where the loneliness can come in. And of course, we all feel lonely at some point in our lives, even if it's just for a tiny moment. Loneliness is a natural thing that can happen even when we're surrounded by people. Loneliness is a very painful emotion, and it occurs when we perceive that we are alone or being shunned or isolated from other people. It can happen more if we're working remotely or working online or not seeing people, if people are not in close contact with us for periods of time, which sometimes happens in life. Or sometimes we could go on an adventure or a holiday but feel like we're alone because we're not having that close connection with people. So loneliness ties into the connection that we feel. Not just that people are around us, but feeling connected to people is a bigger part of why loneliness is there. So really, you don't need to be on your own to feel lonely. You could be working in a busy office with loads of people around you. You could be sitting in the centre of your family with all of your family around who you care about and who care about you. But you could be feeling lonely. Maybe someone really close to you passed away, or a pet passed away, or something happened. And even though you're surrounded by people, you still might feel a sense of loneliness. So loneliness is like a disconnection feeling, disconnected to something or someone that really mattered to you. So personal issues can really have an effect on feeling lonely, such as, like I said, bereavement, or even things like financial issues can bring on lonely feelings, like everybody else is doing okay, or everybody else has bought what they need to buy, or everybody else has done X, Y, or Z, had children, gotten married, bought houses, and I haven't achieved that yet, or I haven't got to that place yet. And you can feel lonely because you're out of sync with others. So the connection isn't in the same way as you would have wanted it. It's not that there's not connection to people, it's just that they seem to be in a different place to you. A big issue for loneliness these days seems to repeatedly be technology. So some people have leaned more towards their social online platforms than they have connecting with people, or they connect with people online rather than in person. But we really do need to feel that deeper connection with people, and we don't feel that deeper connection in general with a device or with social media. A lot of what's in social media, I mean, everybody knows, people make themselves look better, take 100 photos and find the one good one, put that up. So you see all the good or the created good in people when you look at social media sometimes, and then that can encourage a feeling of less than or disconnection, or if you have social anxiety and you lean towards social media and you don't get the connection from really meeting people in person and feeling that they care about you, because we do pick up on other people's feelings when we're around them. We pick up on so much more through body language. I think there's a much smaller percentage of what we pick up on from speech than we do from body language. So actually being around people helps to increase our feeling of connectivity and decrease the feelings of loneliness. So devices have been something that has pulled us into a slightly more lonely world for some of us, or many of us sometimes. So how loneliness affects us. There are kind of three main ways that loneliness affects us. One is depression. So a study has found that lonely people will show a lot more depressive symptoms, and that they are more likely to experience less togetherness when they're in social interactions, or more disconnection from people, or less cared for when they're in a social setting. They feel like people don't notice them, or they disappear, or people don't care how they are or care if they're there. So research has also found that depression and loneliness can feed off each other and perpetuate each other in some way. So again, depression can be linked to not feeling connected, or not feeling good enough, and loneliness can also be linked to those things. So really, if that's an issue for you, if you feel not good enough or not connected enough, then that is something that you need to address if you're feeling lonely. And that could be that your expectations are very high, or that you have an inner critic, a voice in your head that pulls you down, that makes you feel less than. And it's really important to address that and not feel that way about yourself. And to address it, you might need to look at what has caused that, or why you think that way. Or even if you agree with that, you might not agree. It might not be true. And you might have just had someone in your life tell you that, and you took it in as if it were real. So really addressing it, looking at what caused those ideas or feelings and thoughts, and changing them, finding a way to come out of them, to see the reality or change it into a better reality. Another way that loneliness affects us is our physical health. So there have been several studies that say that emotional stress can be connected with a lowered immunity or depressed immunity, and that loneliness and depression are linked with poorer health and poorer well-being. So this would indicate that people that are experiencing loneliness are more susceptible or more likely to get a variety of health issues or to not be well. Again, physical health is also connected to loneliness, so physical pain. Research shows that areas of the brain that deal with social exclusion are the same areas that process physical pain, which would tie in with that whole idea of having a broken heart, or the pain that we feel when we are lonely or we are hurt. It can be quite physical, so we can really feel physical pain when we are lonely. There are 3 different types of loneliness. The first is called interpersonal isolation, and this is that it's not the quantity of relationships that we have, it's the quality of them. So this is the type of loneliness that we really normally think about. It's the not feeling deeply connected to people. Some people really want a lot more deep, close relationships than others. So some people will experience this more than others, where they want or crave or feel that they need a lot of deep, close connections in life. Some people are happy to just have a couple of deep, close connections, and some people want more. So the level or the need of deep relationships and close connections affects how much you might feel lonely in this way. Another type of loneliness is called intrapersonal isolation. So this is that a part of yourself has been cut off, that sometimes people say a part of me has died. You know, if you really loved something and a part of you has died when it has left. And then something, you might remember a time when you felt whole or felt fully connected. And then after a difficult situation or a traumatic event, you might feel fragmented, or a part of you has gone. So this is intrapersonal isolation, and if it's happened, it's important to try and rekindle or reconnect to that missing part. The final type of loneliness is called existential loneliness, and this is that sort of awareness of death and that things will end, or that even though we can be really deeply connected to people, ultimately we are not fully severed to them, we're not fully connected to them, and there is a sense of disconnection, or the fact that things end. So existential loneliness is an awareness that there is a greater, deeper break between me and others, that I will die, that I will not be fully connected to people forever, that there's a lostness, there's an emptiness that can come up there. With existential loneliness, there's something about learning how to be okay that is a reality for us all, and to still feel connected and trusting and safe regardless of that. So some techniques to manage loneliness. The first is really to accept that loneliness is normal, that at least half of us will experience loneliness at some point in our lives, that loneliness is just a part of us, that it's about being connected, about wanting to be really close in a deep way with other people. I think a part of managing it is not to think that you can end it, but to find ways to deal with it when it comes up, to see it as normal, to accept it as healthy, and to have techniques, which I will tell you some techniques in a few minutes, to cope with it or to address it or deal with it or change it. Sometimes loneliness is natural in a way that you might want to feel lonely. So if someone really close to you has passed on, that loneliness is just, it's a statement of how much you cared and loved about them, that they aren't there anymore, even though the knowing of them is actually inside you, that you know how they would answer certain things or what they would say about things, that there's a part of them that you have learnt about them that's inside you. But a certain level of natural and healthy loneliness is okay to have at certain periods in life. Not that you want to stay lonely forever, but it can be part of a process too. And that ties in with sort of accepting the reality of your situation, acknowledging that this is where you are, and find a way to address it and deal with it and work towards a future that is more positive or more hopeful or more healthy. Another way to manage your loneliness is to embrace the feelings, so to connect with them. Some people find them comforting. Some people are used to that feeling. If you're used to or comfortable in the feeling of loneliness, you need to be careful of that, because that could be just a habit pattern that you developed when you were younger that you go back to regularly. So finding a way to embrace it and manage it in a way that helps you to grow and change it. Mindfulness is a really helpful technique here, in that mindfulness helps us to try and see things as they are, so to try and unravel what's going on. Mindfulness always brings curiosity and attention to detail. So what is happening? Why am I feeling this way? Where does this come from? Is it connected to the past? Is it a habit pattern? Do I put myself in situations where I pull away from people? How can I sort of be curious and okay with what I'm doing or how I am, and then moving towards a sort of a different future, or a future that you want to reach, changing it in the way that suits you, that you want to change it, assuming that you want to change it. Being in a situation where you are lonely is an opportunity to also practice self-care, to mind yourself, to look after yourself, to treat yourself, to be gentle with yourself, to look at the inner voices in your head and make sure that they're being nice to you, that you are being kind to yourself and supportive of yourself and helping yourself out. So a part of the management of loneliness is finding a way to really address any self-care issues that you have, and being really supportive and nice to yourself. It's important to find ways to relax, to take time for yourself, to be gentle. So some techniques to manage loneliness include things like joining a class, and that could be any kind of class. It could be something that you want to upskill in an education setting. It could be that you want to join an exercise group or become part of some kind of a team, become kind of some part of some sport that you're interested in. It could be a creative activity, it could be art, it could be drawing, it could be music. So there are countless amounts of classes in different things. So joining a class, not only does that give you a hobby or something that makes you feel good because you're learning something, you're developing, you're growing, but you will also be with people in the class, and it's an opportunity to get to meet some people, to get to talk to some people, and to maybe start to have more connections. Another technique is to do things that make you feel good about yourself. So in general, the better you feel about yourself, the more other people are going to be drawn to you anyway. So if you're doing things that make you feel inspired, happy, positive, contented, grateful, including grateful people tend to be very social. So if you're really focusing on things that make you feel good and really focusing on gratitude and what you're lucky to have in your life, then that feeling of positivity and happiness will sort of ooze out of you a bit, and it will draw people towards you. Another thing is to volunteer. So get involved in some organisation. That doesn't mean that you just volunteer randomly with anything. You find something that inspires you, or that you feel good about, or that you like, or that you're interested in, and you volunteer in that area, so that it's something that is very positive and good for you, but it's also volunteering, it's also doing something good, and it's also helping you to connect with other people, because there will be likely other people volunteering with you. Finding online support can be very helpful as well. So there are many groups, there are many organisations, there is online support. So doing some research in your area, obviously every area is going to be different, but you could link in with your doctor and find out what's in your area. You could link in with local support groups. You could link in with online groups. Another thing is to look at the relationships that you have and try and strengthen or build those relationships. I mean, your friends probably have other friends too, so spending time with the people who you are already connected to and trying to develop that and extend that a bit as well. Getting involved specifically in something like a specific group that is focusing on something, or like it could be a group that have come together to build a shed, that you could help out with building the shed. You'll get to know people in that group. Often people feel more comfortable if they're doing something while they're talking to others, because they're a bit distracted, so they're not so fully focused or so intensely focused on another person. So if you get involved in a group or a work group where people are working together towards something, or even group therapy or personal therapy can really help you have those deep, validating connections with other people. Group therapy in particular can really help you feel connected and loved and cared for. So another technique is to go to some exercise classes. There are many different types of classes, and there are many different types of groups. There's dance, there's yoga, there's swimming, there's sports groups, there's football groups, there's tennis groups. There are so many groups of sports, but often groups can do teamwork, they can do tournaments, they can have different gatherings that really help you to engage and connect in people. So a lot of people will turn to exercise sports, in particular teams, as a way of getting to know more people and connect to more people. A very important technique in managing your loneliness or dealing with your loneliness is looking at anything that you might be doing that are pushing people away or causing people to move away from you or to not feel that you're interested in them. If people feel that they are not likable, they might not think that people like them, and so they might ignore those people, or they might push those people away. So sometimes people are afraid of rejection, so they reject because they're afraid of rejection, and they might not even consciously do it, but it will still happen. And it's really important to notice if you are doing this, if you are not answering people's messages, if you are too socially scared to connect or take the olive branch if someone has invited you to something. So really pay attention to things that you may be doing that's creating loneliness in your life, and then trying to find a way to change that by addressing the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas that you have about yourself, whether that's addressing them with some people that know you and care about you, or going to therapy or group therapy or personal therapy, or finding some way of dealing with it. This isn't for everyone, but I think joining a compassion-based mindfulness group can be very helpful for many reasons. One, we need to increase our kindness towards ourselves anyway, in general. It's, unless you find you're already kind to yourself inside. And then we also, when you practice mindfulness, it helps you to pay attention, to focus, and to be curious about what's going on. So it helps you to see clearer what you're saying to yourself if you have a critical inner voice or a judgmental inner voice, and if that is holding you back or pulling you down or hindering your relationship with others. Another technique is to really pay attention and take interest in people when you meet them, and pay attention to the small things. So that kind, curious, mindful practice, if you do that not just in relation to yourself but in relation to others. So by practicing compassion-based mindfulness, it's a technique that you can use for yourself but also use for others. You can meet people from a kind and curious and interested place. And that really helps create a deeper connection with people. It really helps them to engage with you, to connect with you. Another technique that people often use is they get a pet. So there's a whole pile of research on pet therapy, and that sleeping in the same room as your pet can be really helpful for breathing deeper, sleeping better, relaxing more. That the research indicates that having pets is really good for us and helps us feel really loved and connected, and gives us some of that deep connection that we crave and need. So if it's suitable to have a pet, that might be part of your technique to get on top of your loneliness, part of your strategy. Practicing good self-care is also really important. Making sure that you're sleeping well, that you're eating well, that you're getting exercise, that you're getting enough sunshine, that you're being kind to yourself, that you're looking after yourself is really important for all of us all the time anyway. But if we've got any big issues in life or any difficulties or any feelings that we're struggling with, including loneliness, then it's important to really manage our self-care and mind ourselves through that phase in our lives. I wish you the best with this. Thank you.